Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of foundational biology. We're looking at Chapter 8 on heredity, and specifically, we're going to focus on how variation accumulates during reproduction. If you've ever, looked around at the natural world and wondered why it has such an absolutely incredible array of shapes and features, well, you are definitely in the right place. Let's break down exactly how life copies itself, and more importantly, how it changes along the way. Okay. Let's dive right into this with Section 1, the mystery of variation. Have you ever actually stopped to think about this? Take this brilliant visual comparison from Deschmuxer. On one hand, I want you to picture a massive field of sugarcane, right? It's basically a sea of uniformity. Every single plant looks almost completely identical to the one next to it. But now, flip that image to a crowd of humans. You see absolutely wild diversity. We're talking different heights, facial features, hair types, builds, the whole shebang. Why does the sugarcane look like this giant batch of perfect clones, while we humans look completely different from one another, even within our own families? Well, the answer to that sugarcane question lies right here in the golden rule of reproduction. Basically, reproductive processes produce new individuals that are similar to their parents, but with small differences. When life reproduces, it doesn't just create totally random, unrecognizable things out of nowhere. A sugarcane makes a sugarcane, a human makes a human. The offspring are fundamentally similar to the parents. But, and this is absolutely crucial, they are never entirely identical. It's those tiny little differences that are the real secret to how life evolves and adapts over time. That brings us right to Section 2, defining the differences. And this brilliantly illustrates the core concept we need to talk about. Let's put a proper scientific name to these tiny deviations. Variation. It simply refers to the small differences found in new individuals compared to their parents during reproduction. It's a really simple definition, but man, it carries incredible weight. You see, variation isn't a mistake. It's not some kind of evolutionary glitch. It is a fundamental, totally expected outcome. Every single new generation comes with its own unique, built-in set of tweaks. Moving right along to Section 3, asexual versus sexual reproduction. Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is how it pits the mechanical differences of these two pathways directly against each other. If variation is this universal rule, why do some species seem to bypass it and look identical, while others look so crazy diverse? Well, it all comes down to the specific reproductive pathway a species actually uses. The biological world is largely divided into two main strategies, asexual and sexual reproduction. And these aren't just different ways to make babies. They are fundamentally different ways of managing variation itself. Let's look at the first pathway, asexual reproduction. Now, some variation does occur here. Actually, scratch that, it's not perfectly static, but the variation is incredibly minute. Think of it almost like hitting copy and paste on a computer document. Maybe once in a blue moon a pixel might glitch, but overall, it's an exact replica. This is the secret behind our sugarcane field from earlier. Because they largely rely on asexual reproduction, the individuals are similar to their parents to such an extreme degree that at least to our eyes, they appear completely uniform. But on the flip side of the coin, we have sexual reproduction. Rather than a simple copy-paste job, this pathway inherently mixes genetic material, which ends up producing a far greater amount of successful variation. This right here is the true driver of the visible diversity we see in humans and in so many animals. It creates a robust, highly varied population where literally no two individuals, well, except for identical twins, of course, look exactly the same. And that brings us to our final section, the journey ahead. Understanding the strict contrast between uniformity and dynamic diversity is basically your master key to unlocking the entire concept of heredity. Building on this foundation, Deschmuxer explicitly lays out two massive concepts for the rest of the chapter. First, exactly how these variations are created at a molecular level. And second, how these variations are successfully inherited by the next generation. We've established that the variations exist, sure, but the actual mechanics of their creation and their transmission, those are the next big puzzle pieces we need to snap into place. So here is the crucial point to leave you with. We know sexual reproduction creates a much greater amount of successful variation. We know it's the reason we are all so wonderfully diverse. But how exactly are those specific tiny differences reliably passed down from one generation to the next? Like, what are the actual biological rules of that handoff? That is the profound mystery of heredity just waiting to be solved. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep that question in the back of your mind as you dive deeper into the science.